to create your own compost, to use the same fertilizer, and to overall even use the same seeds, because you can collect seeds from next year. So in this sense, over the years it does become actually very economical and worthwhile. More importantly, for me personally, is the taste. The taste is a massive advantage when you're growing in your own home, because we can actually determine when a good time period to grow your vegetables, and more importantly, because we're letting everything ripen on the vine. You know, we're not picking them off early, we're not putting any chemicals onto it to make the plant produce quickly. We can really let everything get to full maturity, and the taste is a massive advantage, which you will notice. So over here I have a small, a little bar graph showing the costs. So on the left there you can see conventional okra, which is a vegetable which I love to grow. Over the middle you see organic, which is the method I actually prefer growing. And on the way right you see the cost of seeds. As you can see, the seeds are less than half the cost per pound of the same organic okra. So by the time you get one seed packet, which has around 40 seeds in it, equals 40 plants, you can triple the cost of the seeds into organic okra. So it is a massive deal. You can save upwards of $500 a season once you get set up quickly. Yeah. And now from the beginning, the way seeds, because this is a case that a lot of people actually manage to struggle on, because if you mess this up, you're done for it, you can't really continue with that. And it's important knowing this stuff because seeds are a lot cheaper than transplants, like the stuff you see at gardening stores. And now for now, what you need to start the seeds off. Obviously, you're going to need seeds at the bottom right. I don't really bother bringing anything for that because we all know what seeds look like, and you can get them at most gardening stores. Yep, perfect. We have some good demonstration seeds here. Let me just go through them and describe. So as you can see, it's going to tell you the main vegetable they're growing, in this case squash, which is obviously a very important one. And you actually want to pay attention to the picture too, because even though you can all say squash, there's different varieties of squash. So it's important to know what you want to look for in the final harvest and when you should pick the vegetable. On the back, the package always gives information determining the correct temperature the seed can germinate at, the depth at which you have to plant the seed, and the various lengths you have to give the plant to grow correctly. Usually this is very accurate, but you have to keep in mind that it's for generic all-around East Coast America. We have a bit more different climate. In our case, we can afford to set seeds out a bit earlier, and we have much longer growing season than say someone in Massachusetts. So always remember to start the seeds off a little bit before than what the packet recommends. As well as that, you also have to set up the other beginning cost. Over there I have small transplant seeds. I have a small container here, I'll show you. Right here, the seed starting tray. And essentially all this is for is it's a good, cheap way to start the seeds off, because it uses a lot less soil than putting it into a cup, and you can get the most, you can plant all the 40 seeds you get from the packet in one little tray right here. It's a perfect way to conveniently start the seeds off. And I know some people might not like the idea of plastic, but it's important to notice that you can reuse this multiple times. And for example, this one right here, which I use, it's been used maybe a couple times, 5 years. So the cost of each of these is maybe $5 for a pack of 24 of them. And if you can use them 5 years, that's massive savings. And I really don't consider it a problem because you're using it and you're not throwing away any trash. On the top we have there a grow light, which is also something you might want to be interested in putting your money towards. They're actually not very that expensive. The one I have is only around $50 or so, and it's been lasting me upwards of 3 years now, and I have not had to replace the bulb since. The reason you want a grow light, I'll get into more information later, but it's just better than using a window light, for example. And the last thing I have over there is organic seed starts. I have a packet right here. Let me just bring it up. Right here. This is good. Indoor potting mix. You want to make sure you specifically look for a potting mix that says it can contain a wide variety of plants and is good for seeds. The reason being, these potting mixes are sterile. There was limited weed seeds, and there was limited bacteria and fungi that can infect your seedlings and cause any damage. Also, the texture of the potting mix itself is very light, so any seeds won't have any trouble reaching the surface and starting to germinate.
So potting is different from seeding mix, or?
The thing with this one is that the texture is very similar. That's the main thing you're looking for.
Okay.
It has to be very light and fluffy and airy. If it has any large piece of twigs in it, it's going to be too heavy for most tiny seedlings, and you could delay your germination, and you could delay the overall health of the seedling.
Okay.
Also, in my cases, if you're still not 100% certain that there is no fungi, no weed seeds in potting mix, it's a good idea to rehydrate it with boiling water. What I do is I get a small, maybe like a thermos of boiling water, and I pour it into the potting mix. That not only rehydrates the soil, which allows it to hold more water and not dry to seeds, but also, like I said, kills off any pathogens. You just use the potting mix once it's cooled off to room temperature.
So we pour boiling water before you put the seed in?
Yeah. The thing with all these potting soils and all that is it's made mostly of peat moss. Peat moss initially cannot hold any water, and if you try watering that directly, then it's just going to sit on top and actually soak through. So you have to make sure you put it in a separate bowl or something and add, you don't have to add boiling water if you're 100% sure it's sterile, but you have to add water to rehydrate the mix. And you can feel the difference both texturally and in color in the case that, let me just give you a handful right here. So as you can see here, this is really dry and you can see the color difference. It's really light brown, and if you try putting water on it, which I didn't want to get any here, it's going to immediately just fall off the side and not absorb into it. So it's important to make sure you rehydrate the soil mix before potting it. Once it's rehydrated, then you can put it into these cells, and then you can put the seeds inside that.
So we had to wait for it to cool down to come to normal temperature, and then...
Yes, because if you try putting the seeds in boiling water, it will damage them.
Okay. Maybe 1 day or something, or...
No, just as long as it takes cool down, so maybe like an hour max.
Okay.
So for some seeds, they say you put it in boiling water, you boil it and then cool it and then you just seed it. So there are some hard seeds like jasmine seeds.
Exactly. For really tough seeds like that, the one recommended way to actually improve the germination rate is by boiling it. I actually prefer another method called scarification. Essentially what that is taking a sandpaper element, something rough like that, and scratching the surface. Because you're nicking the seed coat then, and just allowing the radicle to come out of the seed faster. Just a good way to get more bang out of your buck for the seeds.
Next.
Yeah, next. So these are some quick tips I have for seeds. The right side here just talks about grow lights and what you need to use. So for most seeds, almost all the time, just using a regular windowsill is not adequate enough. And what's happening is that the seeds will come out very leggy, they'll come out weak, and when they're weak like that, it's hard to transplant them into the ground, and it's also hard for them to have good health to actually continue growing correctly. So what I prefer is to use grow lights. Obviously grow lights is not something everyone wants, because if you have maybe like a dozen or so seeds, it's probably better off to just keep the seeds outside. So I've got a good container here, a good trick I used. So this is a bit smaller, but you can go get storage containers that are like these, preferably made out of glass, and you can keep the seedlings inside it. Let me just pop this open to show you what I mean. So like this, you can put the seeds on top and cover it. Obviously the plastic should be a bit more clear than this, and that actually forms like a mini greenhouse around the plant. So that not only reduces humidity of the seeds, but it also increases the air temperature around them. So it prevents any damage even if you keep it out when it's around 40-ish degrees. It's going to get to around 50 inside the seed, which is perfectly good enough for the germination of winter and spring vegetables, which is what you probably should be sowing around that time. If you did want some summer seeds, you can always wait a little bit until May, and this trick will look perfectly fine, or you can just get a grow light and keep it indoors, in which case it'll germinate.
So how long you should maintain the greenhouse kind of thing, or like until it grows some 2-3 inches, or?
I prefer to keep it on until you're comfortable enough the temperature outside won't damage them. So say for example, once the temperature outside reaches above 45 degrees, okay, at that point it's fine to take the hood off and just leave them be. However, if you do want to keep the hood on, you can actually keep the seeds out in the night, because night time it's going to drop to below freezing, but because of the surrounding heat, the seeds in the soil is going to stay moist and it won't freeze over. And on the left side here I have the seeds. So this is just some quick tips I found when it comes to picking out good seeds. So these seeds are perfectly fine. They might be a bit more on the generic side, but for our purposes, they look more than enough. For example, this just says squash, this one just says carrot, and those are very basic descriptors, right? Obviously, we've seen more than one squash. We have cucumbers, carrot, we have cucumbers, zucchinis, those are all types of squash. If you want more specific seeds, I recommend either going to a gardening center, nursery or whatever they're called, they have a much more larger variety of seeds, and you can also look for specific types. For example, multicolored carrots or squashes that grow in acorn shapes. Additionally, with the seeds, if you want even more variety, you can look online. Online's honestly what I like to look for, because you can get very rare stuff that you can't find anywhere else in the stores. As for seed costs, you should never be paying more than $3, in my opinion, for good quality seeds. Any more than $3, you're just getting ripped off. Most seeds should be between $1 to $2, and don't actually worry about getting seeds that are marketed as organic. The thing with organic seeds is, organic as both what the government describes it and as what most home growers describe it as, is actually the process of growing the plants, not the seeds itself. Organic seeds is a misnomer. Just get any regular seeds, and if you want them organic, you can grow them, give them organic fertilizer, etc., etc. So that's just nothing you should really look forward to. Just try to keep in mind, $1 to $2 is the most you should be spending on seeds. Any more, just go somewhere else.
Next one.
Yeah. And now here I just got some last minute troubleshooting for your seedlings. Obviously, as I mentioned before with the legging, you can put up right there on the bottom right corner, those are examples of leggy seedlings. In those cases, those plants have not received enough light, and what happens is the plant actually tries to reach for more light. And so its stem goes really thin and spindly, and sometimes, most often, it just falls over. And the problem with that is, it does not have a very good developed root system, and the plant itself does not have much energy to actually produce leaves. So in cases like that, you want to make sure that the seeds are getting more light, either, like I said, outside with a Tupperware container or with a grow light.
For lay people, just explain what germination is.
Oh, germination is just the seed into the
Sapling.
sapling, yeah, sprout. Okay? And for low germination rates, or low sprouting rates, what I'd say, most of the seeds you should have between maybe a 60% sprouting rate. Say, for example, I have 10 seeds, at least 6 of them should germinate. Any less than that, and you probably have bad seeds, in which case you should either get new ones, or they're old. If you do have low germination rates, make sure that the seeds are in fact good, because seeds do not keep forever, right? What I like to use is a quick trick here. It's a Tupperware container with the seeds and a moist towelette. What this does is, like I said with the greenhouse, it raises the temperature of the seeds, it provides constant moisture through the wet towel, and it traps humidity inside. In this way, you can see if the seeds are good within 3 days or something, as opposed to the week plus it could take if you try putting it in soil.
What happens in 3 days?
In 3 days, you're going to see a small little, like the root.
Okay, that's broken.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you know if the seed is good. If you see none of that, those seeds are bad, you should probably get new ones. Also for germination, make sure the temperature you have is at least 60 degrees or higher. Any lower than that, and the seed kind of goes into a hibernation state and waits for better temperatures to germinate. I like to use a thermometer, like a meat thermometer or something like that, just to poke into the soil to test. Make sure it's warm enough.
How do you check the temperature?
I usually use a thermometer, or if it's indoors, it's much easier because you know approximately the temperature of inside the house. So if you are growing the seeds inside, for example, and you know the thermometer says 60, you're fine. You don't have to worry about it. If you want, the only case you actually have to worry a lot about it is if you're growing really specific hot temperature plants. For example, I mean like tomatoes, peppers, specific chilies. For those plants, you might actually have to invest in a heat mat. And what a heat mat is, I unfortunately don't have an example with me because it's actually in use right now in my house. But what a heat mat is it provides a temperature to the bottom of the seedlings, so that you germinate faster. So actually, I recommend investing in that. It's maybe $20 for a heat mat. You can look on Amazon, and it just increases germination by improving the heat of the all-around seedlings.
How frequently should we water the seeds?
So the seedlings, I just like to use a good visual trick for them. When I'm germinating my seedlings, I actually like a little trick to put a small plastic pouch like this on top of the seeds. What is it like? Yeah. For example, just cover this one with a little, it's a Ziploc bag, and once it's in that, this actually traps humidity inside as well, and you don't have to worry about watering it, because as long as you see like condensation on the bag, you're fine.
Okay.
However, if you don't want to put a bag on top of it, I recommend taking the actual seedling container like this and putting it into a small lined tray, such as this one. So just fill this with water, and put the seedling inside like so. The reason you want to bottom water like this is because if you try putting water directly on the soil, you're going to push up the soil and actually move the seeds around. So the seeds won't come up in the right places. Because you're pushing the soil around, you could actually push around like diseases and pathogens as well, which could spread around to your other seeds. So it's always a good idea in the case of fragile seedlings like these ones to bottom water. Just pour water into this like here.
We poke holes in it.
These,
It will be there already.
yeah, almost all of them have holes in it.
So I think even that tray, whatever
Yeah,
you
it's
showed,
tray have holes in it.
already has holes in it, and there's a tray underneath.
Yeah, exactly. So you can just pour water into the tray and it'll soak up.
So no need to water again because it will absorb from the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. It's all from the bottom. Only case you should water again is if the seed has not germinated, has not sprouted in over a week. In that case, just repeat the process, putting it back inside water so it can rehydrate once again. The seeds don't dry out. I also want to talk about random flopping. I know sometimes this happens. Over there on the top left, I have a good example of what flopping seeds looks like. In that case, it's just dying off. That's a good case of a fungal disease within the soil called damping off. If the seed just ends up, if it grows and sprouts correctly and then just flops around sideways, that's a symptom of overwatering caused by the fungal disease. In which case, if you are providing too much water, make sure you only water the plant when the soil surface is dry. You can test that by just taking a pinky and dipping it into the soil, maybe a little bit just up to your nail and pulling it out. A good way, if the soil sticks to your finger, then it's moist and you don't have to water it. If you can pull it out and there's nothing on it, then you should water it. There's a small little test to make sure you're watering it at the correct times. Other than that, if it's bone edges, it's too much light. And if the leaves of the plants and saplings are drooping, that's too much water again. Just perform the finger test and find out if you need to water it.
Next one.
Yeah. And now we're going to go to when to start seeds. So I like to always reference a small little chart such as the one I have right here. And I just want to give you guys a brief description, yeah, sure, take pictures, a brief description of summer and winter plants. Winter and spring plants, for example, on the left and the right side, beets, broccoli, kale, peas, those plants are specific in which they can actually survive frost. They can survive temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and that allows them to survive perfectly fine in April and March. For those plants, it's fine to keep them directly sown right outside that early. However, summer plants such as tomatoes, squash, cucumber, peppers, all that yummy ones, they only specifically survive in the hot weather where there's high humidity and there is no danger of frost. If you decide to put out your tomato plants early, say for example, way like the end of April, beginning of May, the soil is still too cold for them. Even though the outside temperatures might be 60, the soil is still at 50 degrees, and while the plants won't die, it's just going to sit there and stagnate. So never actually rush out those plants. You can always just look up on the back, like I said, the back of the seedling, see if it's a summer or winter plant. So winter plants, you can keep them out super early, such as April, and you can actually keep them in ground all the way until December. Just a good brief idea for you. And again, some plants, don't rush them out. That's very important. If you rush them out, you could end up losing all the seedlings. Yeah. And now we'll move on to our next section here, which is the growing and care of the plants. So actually understanding how you get that sapling to yield and yield fruits or vegetables. So I just wanted to go into a brief description of different types of mediums in which ways you can grow. Obviously, we all know soil. Put in dirt, give it water, and it will grow. There's another way which I'm not going to go too in depth in, hydroponics. You might have heard about that or saw it in the grocery store, like hydroponic spinach, hydroponic lettuce. What that essentially is that the plant is not in soil, it's just in water. And those roots are actually able just to soak in the water and everything and go that way. An advantage of that method is that you can actually pack more plants into a smaller area, and because you're indoors, there's limited paths, and the seed actually grows. Because the major thing that actually restricts the plant growth is the size of how it can develop its roots. With hydroponics, there is no limit to that, and it can grow slightly bigger. I personally wouldn't recommend anyone who's new to gardening to get into that, because that deals a lot more into the scientific and chemist side of the growing operation, because you have to really micromanage the water. Besides that, I'm just going to focus on soil. And now here's another great method which I love to use to grow my vegetables, raised beds. I know a lot of you are very interested into this idea, and this is how I first got introduced to gardening, and how I did this. Right there I have a little demonstration of a raised bed. The basic premise is very simple. You just create a small area. I prefer 4x4. And anyway, that's around 4x4, and at the minimum 10 inches. That's a good dimension you should have for your raised bed. And the idea and the advantage of that is you can focus all your fertilizer, all your compost into one specific area. You know that there is no nutrients that are going to weeds or anything. It is all going to your plants. On top of that, raised beds actually heat up a bit faster in the spring. So you can actually grow stuff very well in April, March in raised beds while the soil is still frozen. You can't break it with a shovel. Another good advantage of raised beds is like I have at the bottom. They can be converted to hoop houses, cold tunnels. So for brief description of that, cold tunnels are just like a little greenhouse you build on top of that, so they can grow stuff even earlier, keep stuff out even later. Hoop houses are just little meshes you can put on top of the raised beds to stop insects, to keep the frost out. It's easier to convert, and the soil is, you have to worry about breaking up tree roots or anything like that. For newcomers, I highly recommend raised beds because it's a good way to get into gardening without having to worry about any weeds or outside interference.
But do we really need 4 feet or only 1 feet?
Height is 11 inches.
Yeah, I'll describe more on that next slide.
No. Here, we'll just wait. Okay. Now
Yeah.
you have that mesh. Is it really required?
Which mesh?
Hardware.
At the bottom?
Bottom of that, like the in the picture?
Yeah.
Yes, you need a mesh or you need a weed barrier. And either two work. If you
Yeah, we
don't,
can put that sheet, right?
yeah, the sheet's fine.
Yeah.
It's just a mesh in this picture. But yes, you have to put something basic down before you actually put the soil on top, to prevent any weed seeds, grass seeds from coming out and sprouting in between.
And I have seen some place they also put this cardboards.
Yeah, cardboard is another
Why is
method.
Yeah, last time I put cardboard and it was fine.
Yeah, cardboard works fine. The advantage with cardboard is it actually breaks down in a way too over the seasons. So it can actually serve as like a makeshift fertilizer too once it breaks down. However, it can depend where exactly you want to grow it, because the cardboard does break down, and within maybe 3 seasons, weed seeds can pop up from underneath it. If, for example, you're growing it on a lawn, I prefer in that case to use actual thick fabric, because the grass seeds will come up through the cardboard. But if you're putting it on mulch, then cardboard works fine.
So
Is there any, yeah. Is there only garden soil or anything else in the layer for this bed?
For the raised bed has a very specific soil that you should use. Like, I can start more on the next slide. I actually have a slide talking about that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you can go.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So in my house, I do have a place for gardening. There is a lawn and all
Yeah.
that. You leave that aside. But in the concrete part of my lawn, there used to be a pond. So we do have a cordoned off area, but that pond has now, was used by the previous person who lived there for growing like roses and all that.
Okay.
I want to change that. My fear is I don't know what is underneath. It is always, I always have a problem with weeds there.
Yeah, okay.
So what am I supposed to do in that, should I remove everything and then put the fabric and then put...
Yeah, so if you describe more in depth, like by pond, you mean it's kind of like wet all the time? Then
No, not now.
Okay,
Not
it's
now.
dry.
It's completely just it's like a raised bed,
Okay,
but I
yeah.
don't know what is underneath it.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. In that case, I would recommend just putting on a fabric layer.
Okay.
You can put on a fabric layer. If you want, you can also, what I prefer you could do is actually take like a small shovel or something, just to break up that initial turf layer
Okay.
of the weeds or grass or anything. There'll be, when you dig into the earth, there's like the sod layer, all the grass and everything, and the dirt. Just break apart that first layer with the shovel. Then, once that's broken up, you can easily put the top on top of it, build a raised bed around it, and cover that with soil.
Okay.
And then,
I'll show you a picture. We can do that later.
yeah, sure. So here's the
weed, you need the landscape.
yeah.
If you have weed, that's the only way you can get up. Like here,
Okay.
some kind of.
Yeah, it'll be like a gardening mesh, or like, it's called raised bed fabric, or growing fabric.
Okay.
That's what you should look to buy.
Okay.
What is it like?
Yeah, so this is just a
What
small
is it like?
brief description
What
of
is
the
it
raised
like?
bed.
Yeah.
So you can use wood or you can use concrete to use it. I actually built mine out of concrete blocks. The advantage of that one is it's easier to move, and actually helps provide some like limestone to the soil and neutralize any high pH. which I actually do have in my soil. However, if you're going to use wood, make sure you get untreated wood when you're building the raised bed. If the wood is treated, then it can actually leach all that copper and nasty elements into the soil, and you will end up eating that because the plants do absorb all those elements. So make sure you get untreated soil.
But untreated will have some bugs and all can come, right?
They won't have bugs if you go to like a lumber shop, they won't have bugs in the untreated.
I mean, if you leave it outside,
yeah,
because of the
outside
rain and all.
down, yeah, over time.
Yeah.
But it lasts good like 3 seasons, in which case you can just replace it again.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, that's why I also like using the concrete blocks too, because those take a lot longer to break down.
Oh, okay.
And you can move it around too. It's a lot easier to pick up the blocks itself, right, than it is to pick up the entire wood. And also important, so why do you have that area 4x4 or 10-inch depth? So 4x4 is actually more or less the length most of us can reach into. If it's 4 feet by 4 feet, from any side of the bed, we can reach into the middle of it. So at that length, you can actually use every square inch of the bed and nothing's wasted. I know what I had sometimes in my old raised bed was that it was very long. So I'd actually have to really lean over into the sides to reach to try to get anything in the middle. So that's just a good ergonomic size 4x4.
I mean, you should not step into the
You should
bed.
never step into the raised bed.
Okay.
The thing with stepping into the raised bed is it actually compresses the soil.
Okay.
And if you're compressing the soil, it's making it harder for water to penetrate, nutrients to penetrate, and more importantly, for the actual plant roots to penetrate into the raised bed.
Okay.
And when it finds that difficulty, it actually starts to go through the plant. That's a huge advantage of raised bed soil. If you build it in that 4x4 size, you never actually have to step into it, and it's always going to have a good, nice, loose condition. As for the 10-inch depth, I like that area because the plant root should have at least 6 to 8 inches, and with 10 inches, you can provide a good buffer on top, so you can actually continue to layer on stuff in between the season. If it's too high, the wind's going to end up blowing off. If it's too low, then the plant actually won't get enough space.
We'll share the PPT.
Yeah, we'll share it.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah. And now this is the soil for the raised beds, which I actually want to keep inside it. So over here I have good pictures of what you'd like to put into it. My preferred mix, as demonstrated right there, is 50% compost, 50% topsoil. So what is compost? Compost is basically just biological matter that has been broken down and provides a good amount of nutrients and soil texture to the plants. Compost can either be in supermarkets or in gardening stores. You will see fertilizer, manure, compost, mushroom compost. Those are all the words you want to use. I prefer you can go straight for things labeled compost because you know that will have a high organic nutrient count and it will be good in the sense that it will break down over time. Manure is also fine. It's just, the animal version of compost. Compost is usually plant matter. Topsoil, as I have demonstrated at the bottom left of there, is a soil it's not very nutrient rich, but what it lacks in nutrients makes up for in texture. It provides a good filler matter for the raised bed because if you try going on the compost, that's very expensive and it's also kind of wasteful because compost ends up breaking down anyways. The topsoil, this adds a good buffer so the manure or compost can break down correctly and it provides that good aeration and looseness for your soil. As for all these other specific stuff I see, raised bed soil, that's also pretty good. If you see anything called raised bed soil, you can also use it. I have right here. Is this one you labeled as? This is potting mix. Potting mix is different from raised bed soil. Raised bed soil, the difference with that one versus potting mix is that it have small pieces of wood, like wood chips like these in it. Yeah, mulch in it. That's fine for raised bed. But for potting mix, it's a bit more difficult because, like I said, you want to make sure soil is super loose. And if you want seeds to germinate, they'll have trouble when there's big pieces of mulch in it. As for the other two right here, cocoa coir and peat moss, this is an option if you really want to make your own compost, your own soil, not worry about any bagged items. These peat moss and coconut coir are what all that raised bed mixes are made out of. And you can actually go from the beginning and make that. Essentially what those two elements serve as is that they're good matter in the sense that they absorb water very well and they keep their texture. So they prevent the soil from drying out. And that's a major component of any soil you want to be making. If you do want to make your full soil by scratch, I recommend you do 33. That's a good ratio. So that's 33% compost, 33% peat moss, coconut coir, and 33% of vermiculite or perlite. That's another thing you see at gardening stores. That essentially adds drainage to the soil so water can pass through, it doesn't get waterlogged and choke the seeds out.
So we mix all the soils and then put them
Yeah,
in.
exactly. You can put in the wheelbarrow. You can probably just dump it into the raised bed itself and use shovel, yeah.
Okay.
Bobby, since we are live, some people might have questions, right?
Did I have any
Yeah,
questions?
I'm checking and nobody's asking so far. Yeah.
Okay,
If they
yeah.
have, just
Yeah.
let them.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
let me know.
So one question.
Yeah.
So the raised bed soil, do we have to mix it with topsoil or it's already mixed?
Raised bed soil can actually serve as, it does serve as a topsoil substitute in this case. You still have to mix compost in, but if you have raised bed soil and compost, you're fine. The only advantage that raised bed soil has is that it has some small amounts of nutrients in it, and it also has like the perlite and vermiculite that you don't have to worry about adding in. And it is more expensive too. It's just labeled and looks nicer.
So can you come again, like topsoil and raised bed soil, like 50%?
No,
is-
you cannot combine
I mean, which one we should combine? What is the topsoil?
Compost.
compost, yeah.
Topsoil and compost? Or
Topsoil, compost, raised bed soil.
any one of the raised bed or topsoil?
If you combine topsoil and raised bed soil, there will be no nutrients for the plants,
Okay.
and they will end up dying. or
So you
going
don't have a
to the
picture of compost in this, right?
Yeah, because compost has very different types of forms you can take. I
So-
don't want to give every single.
Okay, I think that's what this question was. So topsoil and compost, we have to mix it 50-50, right?
Yes. It's always going to be labeled specifically as compost. It's never going to be raised bed soil, never going to be potting soil. It'll always be labeled compost. Alternatively, you can use manure, which is always labeled manure. You know, like.
What about coconut fiber? Mix
Yeah,
with what?
coconut coir is it's a base element. It's what the raised bed soil is made out of.
Okay.
In that case, it just serves to soak up water. I'm saying that if you really don't care about buying the raised bed soil or the compost, you can start from scratch and combine like coconut coir, compost, you can make your own, and vermiculite perlite to get a better version of the raised bed soil.
Okay, okay.
And in some shops, right, like Home Depot, they have different kinds of raised bed soils. Like
Yeah.
They have.
So I can kind of demonstrate right here what you want to look for in the soils.
So do we need something specific for flowers, something specific for vegetables, or?
No, you don't. The only difference between that is you might have slightly different nutrient counts, but they will all work for vegetables. They will all work for flowers. It's just a gimmick for you to keep spending money. Like, oh, I have flowers. Let me buy the flower mix. Oh, I have vegetables. Let me buy a vegetable mix. It all works the same.
There is a question here. What about peat moss? What is it? What is it? Peat moss? What?
So peat moss, technically, what it is it's just it's a type of soil they get from peat bogs in Canada, in the west coast of the U.S., for example. It just serves to soak up water. Peat moss, importantly, has no nutrients in it, so you cannot go in pure peat moss because the plant will get nutrients. That's why I recommend always combining 33% peat moss, 33% compost, 33% vermiculite perlite to add drainage to the soil.
And one more question is, I have a piled up fall leaves in a corner. Can I put raised bed soil top of that and grow veggies?
So the thing with these broken up leaves, the leaves actually take nitrogen from the soil to break down. So I would recommend putting the leaves straight in. You can put the leaves into a compost pile, have them break down, and then you can put that compost into the raised bed.
Okay.
If you put the leaves directly, it'll take nutrients from the soil itself, take nutrients from your plants.
Somebody has a question?
How reliable are some counties give compost for free?
Yes,
How reliable is that compost?
that's very reliable. You should definitely use that if you have the option for it. Because that's made out of local ingredients, yeah.
Some counties provide. Go on to your county website and they'll show if they have that program.
We can go from our
Yeah.
to your community.
I can get it for you. Like
Exactly. How many things those communities do?
East
Every
East
county, yeah.
The reason how they make that compost is they just take all like the leaf. People put out leaf bags. They take the leaf bags. They take onion like cow manure stuff from local farmers, and you just combine that. And that's very high quality because it's local, and it has a bunch of elements and nutrients you cannot get yourself. You know, like we can't get manure unless we buy it. So you should definitely use that if you have the option.
And while making compost, should you always have it covered?
So I have like a specific side for compost. So I'll get
Okay.
very in depth in how we can make that correctly.
Example.
Thanks. So this is just in-ground as opposed to raised beds. Advantages of in-ground is that you have much more space. You're not limited off by a physical barrier
Yeah.
in this case. However, at least in New Jersey, it's very important actually to break up the soil beforehand. Because if you don't, it's very tough and your seedlings cannot get good development. What I recommend is use a rototiller, like a machine like this. You can rent out from Home Depot for maybe like $100 for the weekend or something like that. And that's like basically a machine that tears up and move the soil around so it becomes loose and nice and growing.
And you can't do that with a shovel.
You can do it with a shovel and pickaxe. That's what I use. Like for example, for small areas, you can just use pickaxe, pick the ground, and then use a shovel to actually dig in and make that. However, in New Jersey, the soil is like heavier clay, and if there's lawn on top of it, it's very difficult to get a good amount of progress done.
Okay.
So you can definitely do that, but I just recommend using the rototiller.
And we have one more question from Deepthi. Their recycling facility has free topsoil and compost. Is that good from richness point of view?
Yeah.
The township, they are giving free topsoil, it seems.
Who is giving free topsoil? Sorry.
Westwind sir.
Westwind. Do they know where exactly it's sourced from or anything, like from an ethical standpoint? Is that what you want to know?
Deepthi,
No, is it good enough to use?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I said, it's a part of that community thing, and it's sourced from local ingredients. And the people who oversee that are actually, the agriculturists themselves. They don't just give it off to anyone. These people actually perform the correct calculations to get a good composure and composition of the soil itself. So that's high quality topsoil too.
No, but I think you want to read out the percentage again. They had a percentage.
Yeah.
no, they didn't get, huh?
No, she said 33, but 3:1 or something.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, so if your community provides anything, that's also a very good way to get the materials itself. It's usually cheaper, and it is usually always high quality. Actually, not usually, it is always high quality. It just usually is cheaper as well. Next, yep. So this is just another small thing I have to demonstrate how you actually make that in-ground bed. Like if you're going in the dirt itself, how to make that good and friable. Like I said, you can use a rototiller to break it up. And another good way is to just actually add some amendments to it so it's self-loosen up. Over here in the picture, I have stuff you can add. Remember how you mentioned like putting leaves and everything on it? This is a good way you can layer the soil on top of it. If you layer it like this over the years, it will break down and make its own compost by itself. In the ground,
How many years?
it'll take around 2 years. If you like, the thing is with the in-ground bed, the soil itself has a lot of nutrients, more than enough.
This was kind of my question, the second part of my comment
Yeah, sure.
question. I told you that I have a gardening space.
Yeah.
There is a tree right behind that,
Sure.
county tree, and I have all the fall leaves fall
Yeah.
there, and I've just left it as is.
Okay.
So I should just turn it around and I should be good?
If you take it into an area and you mix it with like green vegetables, like grass clippings, vegetable clippings, it'll break down in the summer within a month or so.
Okay, and I can just...
You have to make sure you're aerated. I prefer just take them all and put it into one separate corner and just put like vegetable scraps, grass clippings, things like that on it. Because the thing with compost is, it has to have a dry carbon component, in this case leaves, and a wet nitrogen component, in the other case vegetable matter. If it has both those elements, it'll break down very fast and give you a high quality compost. Otherwise, it'll take a lot longer to break down.
Are we talking compost now?
Yeah, that's compost.
Okay.
I'll get to that more
fine.
in depth with compost.
And I have one more question
sure.
from Lakshmi Kolal. Pouring a tablespoon of coffee powder good for indoor plants, or it encourages fungus?
So the thing with coffee powder is, like coffee powders and coffee grinds, right? That's what she's asking more.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that is, that also has to break down, and in the process it will take nitrogen from the soil and it will take nutrients from your plants. The advantages of coffee grounds initially is that they make a very good textural element because it's very light, very fluffy. If you have heavy soil, you can always just layer it on top, and it can provide a good area for your seeds to break into until they get big enough and go strong enough roots to punch through the soil. So if you put a tablespoon in, it's actually not going to do much. I recommend just putting any used coffee grounds into a compost pile where it'll break down and make better compost.
Okay.
I have a question, sorry. So how much should we fill in the raised beds?
The raised bed, say for example it's 10 inches, which is what I would say, fill it to 8 inches. So you should always usually leave like a 2-inch gap just so it doesn't flood over in case of rain.
Okay. And the last season, my roots kind of shot through the weed filter. What do we do in that? Is that avoidable, or it's an unavoidable situation?
It's pretty much unavoidable. If they have the strength to push through it, then the only thing I could really recommend is add more soil, give them an extra 2 inches to grow and penetrate in beforehand. Most of the time, the plants won't actually bother punching through it. They'll just go around the fabric. If you're not punching through it, then you're actually doing it to add more depth to the raised bed, because that means they don't have enough space, pretty much.
How do we protect plants from squirrels? That's what Subbu is asking.
Sorry, what?
How do we protect
Yes.
plants from the squirrels? Or
Squirrels. Probably next slide. Go
Okay.
next slide. It's right there. Okay, I'll just mention for that question right there. A fence around the raised bed is probably only, honestly, the 100% way to get rid of them. Squirrels and deer, especially, man, I hate deer. They eat all the plants. They're very aggressive, especially in the winter months. They see that yummy vegetables going and everything else is dead, they're going to punch through it.
Who, squirrels and?
Squirrels and deer.
Deer,
So
yeah.
you need to have a very strong plastic or metal fence to keep them away.
Even we have a fence of 4 feet also it jumps? Or?
Easily.
Oh my God.
Easily jump 4 feet. So you have to make sure you have a good strong fence. The main thing that will prevent them from jumping in is that if it's a situation they can't escape. Say for example, my raised bed is against my house. The deer know if they jump in, they can't jump out because not enough space to get a running start. That's the only case deer want to jump in. So in our case, it's only 6 feet high. But if it's in the middle of a field or middle of your yard, you have plenty of space within the fenced off area, you have to be at least 6 to 8 feet tall. As for squirrels, make sure you line a small mesh at the bottom of the fence because they won't jump over it, they'll dig underneath it, right? So just put another plastic mesh at the bottom of the metal fence and that'll prevent squirrels, sometimes rats if you get very lucky. Groundhogs is a very common occurrence. So that's a good way to get rid of all those mammals, mammalian pests. And this is just ground soil amendments. Oh, go back. Yeah, look at the compost. See? So ground soil amendments. These are just small stuff you can add to make the soil better in either raised bed or in the ground. So pre-moss coconut coir, like I said, loosens up the soil and adds biomass. So is fertilizers like that one over there. For example, this soil right here is potting soil. Does already contain some. This contains some soil-release fertilizers. What soil-release fertilizers do is that, as it implies, they break down over the course of the growing season, and they provide a constant nutrient intake for your plants. That's good because if you do miss out on like liquid feeding, you still have something to back them up with. That's a good way so you never halt the growth. The thing with plants is, if they miss even a small amount of nutrients, they completely stop their growth, and it actually takes an extra week or two for them to continue even once you provide the nutrients. So you always want to make sure they have that constant, slow, steady rate of some nitrogen, some potassium in the soil, and that's what soil-release fertilizers do. Epsom salt, over there, you might see it in like the health section of supermarkets and stuff. So people do put it in like baths and everything because it's supposed to loosen up your skin. But what it actually is it's a earth salt of magnesium sulfate. And magnesium and sulfate are two elements that the plants do actually require a lot of. And what I like to do is always add maybe a tablespoon in when I'm watering them, maybe once every month. Next. And now we're getting on to homemade compost, how to make it. And I have a small graphic there showing what you can and cannot compost. There. As for what you can compost, it's pretty simple. Most vegetable matter you can 100% compost, including vegetable scraps, lawn trimmings, etc., etc.
Eggshells?
Eggshells, yes. Eggshells are actually the one animal product I recommend you can compost. Most animal products might contain pathogens, attract pests, and they break down at a lot slower rates. So for example, cheese, pizza, bread. Actually, one thing I would recommend is rice. You can add cooked, unseasoned rice to the raised bed. Worms love that stuff. So if you have any worms, they will eat all the rice.
Okay.
So mostly just focus.
Sona masuri rice?
Yeah.
Sona masuri.
Any rice.
So quinoa?
I don't know about quinoa. I haven't tried that. I mean, the thing with rice is it's like heavy in sugar, like heavy in starches, and very easy to digest. So that's why all bacteria are.
Today there is no rice in our rice.
No, we make only sona masuri.
Yeah, I don't know if quinoa is as easy to digest, so I don't know if it'll break down that fast. And then right there we have.
Quinoa, it may not digest.
Yeah, it may not digest, honestly. And then you have what you can actually contain it in. I prefer to keep my compost contained in a box or a trash bin, for example. It's neater, it just looks nicer, and you can focus all the breakdown to one specific area.
So this is where I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
All through the last couple of months, so I had some potting soil from last year's
Yeah, you
gardening.
can toss in all parts
So
of it too.
I basically I put it all in a bin,
Good.
exactly
Yeah,
like this,
perfect.
and then I started putting in all of this. Should I keep it covered?
Keep that covered. Yes, you should.
If I don't, what's gonna happen?
If you don't, honestly, you get a lot of bugs and stuff and
I
rats.
haven't gotten any bugs.
Yeah. Oh, they're in there. They're in there.
But that's good, right? It's going to help the compost.
Depends on the bug. Like some bugs don't really do anything. Like cockroaches don't really break down much. Other than that, worms can actually break down, but worms actually don't crawl in. You have to add worms in.
Oh, I should add worms.
Yeah, you can like dig them up. Or maybe if there's a rainstorm, whatever, there'll be worms that are gone. Pick a couple up and just toss it into the compost.
We have a question
So
from
when I start turning around my soil, I need to pick that up and put it in then into
Yeah,
my compost.
yeah, and also good idea right there. Like I mentioned, you should aerate the compost. The main way compost breaks down is through bacterial action, and the bacteria that break it down need oxygen in order to do their own magic. If you don't continuously turn the compost maybe every 2 weeks, there's no oxygen in the soil, and it'll break down very slowly. So make sure every 2 weeks you take a pitchfork, just mix it around with something to get some air into it.
I have two questions. One is we eat a lot of curries and sambar, so we can put that also in the compost.
Be careful about that because there's a lot of salt in it, right? It has
Oh, it should not have
seasoning,
salt?
If you put no seasoning, no salt, then yeah, you can toss it in. But any like masala powder or anything that can affect the soil.
So do you think, I mean, how do you do that? Your compost is in the back.
Yeah, it's in my backyard.
And then you do, what is your daily process? When you are in the kitchen and you got, I do put it in a container and then
Yeah, that's
you do
fine.
that every day?
What I do is that I take like a small bag or whatever, a cloth bag, plastic bag, and hang it over the trash can. So whenever she goes to like throw some vegetables in, oh, I can put this in the bag. And she puts it in like that bag. And once the bag folds, I go and I dump it on the bag into the big
So in
compost.
about once every 2 or 3 days?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
that's exactly what
Yeah,
I
it's
do.
exactly what you should be aiming for.
We have a question from Deepthi. How to add Epsom salt? Learned that it helps holy soil,
Yeah,
like
it,
tulsi, grow well.
it does, yeah.
Is
it
that
does.
salt good for garden bed?
So the thing with salts is the plants will actually uptake the magnesium and sulfur very well. Regular salt is not magnesium sulfate, right? It's sodium chloride,
Sodium
right?
chloride, yeah.
Plants do not need as much of that, and if you add too much of that, it actually dehydrates the soil.
But Epsom salt is good.
Yeah, magnesium sulfate the plants absorb readily. And they
Any
actually
plant we
grow
can put?
quicker.
Or
Sorry?
any plant we can put? That
Yeah, every plant it helps out. Don't put too much though,
How
because
often should we